Hey everybody, it is You Had to Ask, the show where I answer your questions, and this week, my first question comes from Ahoyerno, who says, why is there so much homophobia in sports? Will this change in the next decade? Well, to take the last part first, I anticipate that it will, simply because I think homophobia in general is on a downward trend in our culture. I don't think that it will be completely gone, either, broadly speaking, or in sports in 10 years. I think it will probably continue to be a problem and continue to be sort of an oppressive force in our culture for quite some time, unfortunately. But yeah, I think it'll be a lot better in 10 years. I certainly hope it will be. I think one of the things that will make it better is that I foresee more openly gay athletes in the future. I think that once being gay and being an athlete at a high level in a professional sport becomes normalized and just something that we don't think twice about, I think the amount of homophobia will decrease. Why is it there in the first place? The same reason I think that there's homophobia present anywhere, really, because there's a lack of understanding about what it means to be a gay person, about what that does and doesn't tell you about a person who is gay. And also, I think in sports particularly, there's a lot of macho bullshit. There's still the stereotype that a gay man, for instance, can't be tough, can't be an athlete, can't be a quote-unquote man's man, can't be strong or competitive or whatever. And that's just horseshit. And again, the more it becomes prevalent and the more it becomes normalized in sports, the more that attitude will go away, I think. I hope. Bruce Bartup. Steve, what is it with American colleges and their students? As the college campus uprisings continue, hooray, I see time after time that the UK attitude of college authorities, tolerant but cold and distant, is not matched at all in the USA. There are concerns for members of our, insert college name here, family, who don't feel they fit in. I saw this at crisis points even at both Mizzou and CMC, and no one remarked on it. Faculty resigning, boards in turmoil, presidents resigning, and still someone could be found saying something along the lines of, is this what our community has come to, that students aren't having fun? I mean, it all seemed a little bit Chippewa to me, a Brit. My college tutors would have died of embarrassment before even framing such a thought. Students are the scum who infest the noble institution, not family. Okay, a while ago now, but not that long ago. Can you explain the cultural conundrum? Having never experienced college life or university life in the UK, I can't really make an informed comparison, and I don't really know a lot about the cultural differences between the two. But as far as people saying things like there's trouble in our university family, or making efforts to make students more comfortable. A lot of people kind of talk down on that. A lot of people look at that and take a very dismissive attitude toward it, and they say things like, they're not here to be a family, they're here to learn, And I think the other side of that is that when students come to college, especially when they're living on campus, when they've traveled away from home, in some cases they've traveled great distances away from home, I don't think it's wrong to ask the leaders of the school, the faculty, the administrators, to view it in that way, and to make sure that there is a supportive and inclusive and peaceful and open and tolerant environment for these students, not only to learn, but to live. And I think one reinforces the other. I don't know how you can argue that the learning wouldn't be affected negatively if the living part, if the community part had some very negative aspect to it. You can't just expect students to leave their experiences on campus or their experiences being mistreated or discriminated against or harassed or abused or shunned or ignored or pushed to the side in the campus culture, in the campus community, to just leave all that out in the hallway and then just come into class and be a focused, determined, excellent student. I just don't think it works that way. And I don't think it's unreasonable for students or for members of faculty to be concerned, not just about the level of education, not just about the discourse in the classroom, but also about the community and the way people are being treated in the community of the school. I don't think that's unreasonable at all. Maybe that's an American thing. Maybe you don't see that as much, or that attitude isn't as prevalent among either students or teachers in the UK. Like I say, I don't know, but that's how I see it as being in here in the U.S. And I don't have a problem with it. I think it makes perfect sense. Rune Mian. All right, for this one I need to wind up a little. Right now in my home country Germany, at least in the Catholic parts, hundreds of thousands of children go from door to door, collect money for charity, and write the blessing CMB, Caspar, Melchior, Balthasar, and Christus Mansionem Benedicat, on chalk on the doors. Those children, as the acronym CMB implies, are dressed up as the three wise men, the three magi from the Bible. It's really a nice little cultural artifact, and it's for a good cause. Now the problem. You just won't be able to find enough black and brown Catholic children willing to participate in the event to fill all the roles of Melchior the Black Magi. In my home city alone, there were more than 100,000 children blessed by the Archbishop to go out and collect for charity. To be fair, though, the three magi are a big deal in my home city because their earthly remains are supposedly enshrined there. The solution? Blackface. Now, I understand and fully support why blackface is absolutely horrible in your U.S. American context, but I'm having real trouble to see the situation here with as much disgust. I think the context here makes it, I don't know if okay would be the right word, because since I am white, that wouldn't be my call. I just think it makes the situation more differentiated. What are your thoughts? Again, it's sort of like the cultural differences that I just discussed in the previous question. I don't know enough about it personally to have a really strong opinion either way. My first instinct is to wonder what people of color in your community, or your old community, your home community, think about it. Are they okay with the blackface? Do they see it as just, a cultural artifact that isn't really insulting or demeaning to them, and they're just sort of, yeah, whatever, we don't really care? Or do they have a problem with it? Are there large numbers of people of color in these communities where these customs are carried out that are saying, hey, we're not cool with this, please don't do this? Because that makes a difference to me. As for how I feel about it personally, I don't know why you have to put someone in blackface to play the role of a traditionally black character. I think, and again, this is a cultural difference maybe, but here in the United States, people are gradually sort of starting to come around to the realization that you can, if you are let's say you're a white person, you can dress up in costume as a character of a different race or a different skin color without having to blackface yourself. You can get the message across through costuming, without having to paint yourself to look like another race and to invoke all these really unpleasant, uncomfortable allusions to blackface and racism. I saw a photograph over this past Halloween of a little boy, a little white boy, who was dressed up as Malcolm X. No blackface. But it read very clearly as Malcolm X. And even if you didn't look at that kid and immediately think, oh, he's dressing up as Malcolm X. If you had gone up to him and said, hey, little kid, what are you for Halloween? What's this? Explain this costume to me. And he said, oh, I'm Malcolm X. You would have gotten it. Because, oh, the glasses and the tie. Of course, you're Malcolm X. So I don't see how blackface is necessary for the costume, even if the character they are portraying is traditionally seen as a black person. I don't see why, if you can't get a black child who is willing to play the role, why you have to blackface the white child in order to make it work. Captain Andy, my question has to do with Star Wars. I'm a fan of all the Star Wars movies, including the prequels, and after I watched The Force Awakens, though I really enjoyed it, I was all prepared to defend it against accusations of unoriginality from fellow fans. But there don't seem to be any. Star Wars fans seem to be perfectly fine with The Force Awakens borrowing heavily from A New Hope. Even the character of Finn seems to be very similar to Han Solo, given as Han's backstory is that he used to be an Imperial pilot who was dishonorably discharged for refusing to kill an escaped Wookiee slave, i.e. Chewbacca. Also, Kylo Ren is very, very, very similar to a character called Jason from the Expanded Universe novels. Add to all that the prequels were heavily criticized for not being enough like the original movies. So my question is there no room for originality in Star Wars? Do Star Wars fans just want cute robots, a bad guy in a mask, a dogfight or two, and a big massive super weapon that destroys planets from every movie? In a sense, Star Wars has never been about originality. It's been about taking familiar pieces and rearranging them in creative ways. You know, even the original film, which, as you notice, I am insisting on calling Star Wars and not A New Hope. This is a hill I will die on. Uh, even though it was the first film in what eventually became that whole franchise, it itself was pieced together from parts of different films. It was a mishmash of genres. It had bits of Western, it had bits of fantasy and adventure and pulp, you know. It was constructed of a plot that was borrowed very heavily from samurai films, especially Kurosawa's The Hidden Fortress, and it just but all those elements were sort of stirred up and placed into a new context, and through those recycled or sort of borrowed elements, something that felt really fresh and very new and very exciting was created. And I would say something similar about The Force Awakens. I mean, obviously, it's not as original as the original Star Wars, but I do think it stands on its own as its own thing, and I don't think that its connections to that first film detract from that. So when I think about the originality of The Force Awakens, it's not so much that it tells a story that you never would have imagined a Star Wars movie telling, but it both echoes the older films and sort of plays into expectations we would have, but it also undermines or subverts those expectations. Like you mentioned how Finn is sort of an analog to Han Solo, but then again so is Rey, you know? And Finn has elements of his story that don't really match up with other characters, just as Rey does, just as Poe Dameron does, you know? It would be, you could say, well, Poe Dameron is kind of like Han Solo. He's sort of the swashbuckling, smirking, wisecracking hero. But there are parts of Poe that don't correspond to Han as well. And there are parts of Han that correspond to multiple characters in the movie. You know, there are parts of Kylo Ren that are, you know, very much echoes of Darth Vader or even of the Anakin character as portrayed in the prequels. But then there are also parts of him that are not, that are unique to him. So I think it would be, you would have to look for originality within a certain framework. There's going to be originality. There's going to be variations on themes. There's going to be subversion of expectations as well as fulfillment of expectations. But it's all going to be within a very Star Warsy context. Kieran O'Sullivan. Are comic book heroes reactionary? Isn't the need for superheroes an undesirable impulse for a benevolent dictator? I think it depends on who you are identifying with in the superhero story. If you're looking at the regular people in the superhero universe and you're sort of placing us in their shoes and saying, you know, we enjoy superhero stories because we like to imagine a world where there are such people, where there is a Superman up there to protect us and to make things right, then I can kind of see that. Like I say, that point of view makes sense. That interpretation, I think, is valid. But you can also identify with the heroes themselves. And that itself is not without its troubling implications, because if someone says, well, I really identify with Superman, I really wish that I was Superman, that's not always positive. You could read that as, I wish I had that kind of power, I wish I had that kind of control. But you can also look at it from the point of view of, I identify with Superman because if I had those powers, if I had those abilities, I would want to do with them the same things that Superman does with them. I would want to use my abilities to help people. And you could even say in my own life as it actually exists, as a non-superhero person in a non-superhero world, I try to use what I have and what I can do and what I know to help people in my own small, inadequate way. You can relate to superheroes on that basis, and that's just as valid an interpretation as the benevolent dictator take. that you have, or that you describe at least. I don't know if that's your preferred take or not, but that's the one you describe in your question. So yeah, I don't think it doesn't necessarily reflect a desire for a benevolent dictator. It could reflect a desire to aspire, to want to be able to help people, or to maybe wish that other powerful people in our society used their power and their influence and their resources to help people more than they do. It could be about that too. I know, and for me, I think it is, at least consciously. When I think about it, that I think is what, in the broadest sense, appeals to me the most about superheroes. It's that example of saying, if I had those abilities, this is what I would want to do. I would want to be like Superman, and I wish that more people in our communities and in our societies who have the equivalent of Superman's powers in terms of their wealth or their political influence or whatever, would use their powers for good more often and more proactively. Chewy earlobes are my weakness. How can we handle women who are against feminism? Like, I always try to listen to those who are in underprivileged groups, but what if a member of that group is against the movement that is trying to help them? I met a woman who is very against feminism and even told me that her life as a woman has been beneficial, and she named examples like people treat her well because she's a woman, or pretty, she can get away with some things, get special treatment for other things, and she even said that she believes women have power in certain positions in life. Like she said, even though men control a lot of things, women in a way control men because a lot of men aim to have these things and to mate and find a woman, and I don't know, she was all over the place. Anyways, how do you handle women who are against feminism, and how should I handle it? The arguments against feminism, to me, don't make any more sense or don't carry any more weight when they are being delivered by a woman than they would if they were being delivered by a man. I just don't think they're good arguments. So that's the first thing, is the arguments against feminism are so bad, at least all the ones I've heard, that it doesn't matter whether they're being told to you by a woman or by a man. You can engage with the arguments on their own merits. And the other thing I would point out is feminism is meant to address gender inequality, and gender inequality is culture-wide and systemic. And just because a woman can say to you, probably completely honestly, they're probably sharing with you their genuine experience, can say, well, I don't feel oppressed, I've had a pretty good life, that doesn't mean that the oppression that they have not experienced from their point of view doesn't exist. The idea is that the culture, the system of male dominance, of sexism, of patriarchy is what needs to be reformed. And the fact that there are some women who have done okay underneath that system, have been able to prosper within the patriarchal structure, doesn't mean that the structure doesn't exist. That to me is analogous to saying, well, how can there still be racism? We have a black president of the United States. Of course, there are black Americans who have been able to find empowerment and prosperity within our system. But that doesn't mean that we don't have a system that still overwhelmingly disadvantages black people. The same thing is true with women. Just because there are women, and women at all levels, not just women who have become incredibly successful, like financially or politically, but women like this person you're talking to, who just feels like she's had a pretty good life and doesn't feel like she has suffered because she's a woman. Just because people feel that way doesn't mean that the systems of oppression that they are unaware of or don't feel affect them don't exist. I think there's plenty of evidence that they do. Whether your friend who is an anti-feminist woman believes they do or not. And the gods agree with me, I think. I will take that thunderclap as a sign. Not as a sign so much that this segment of the video is over, although it also means that, but a sign that that was, you know what that was? That was a boom. Right on, Steve. That's what that was. Thank you, God of Thunder. I appreciate that. I also appreciate the tap on the shoulder telling me that it is now time for
the lightning round. Rapid fire questions, glib and adequate answers.
Joanna Roberts. So my cat keeps begging for wet cat food. Should I give in and spoil him rotten? I don't know. I'm not a vet. Actually, my vet a couple years ago told me to stop giving my cat wet food. I usually only give Audie dry food on veterinary advice, so I don't know. I'm not the person to advise you. Although in generally speaking, outside of like dietary advice, my advice is always to spoil the kitty rotten, no matter what. Fitz, what's the best way to clean a baseball cap? Throw it away when it gets dirty and buy an identical new one. That's what I do. Lucas Hackett. Hey, Steve, imagine if you had to book and referee an Elimination Chamber match that featured Mike Seaver, Theo Huxtable, Alex P. Keaton, Eddie Winslow, Bud Bundy, and Eric Foreman. Who would you have win and why? P.S. Just for fun, who would you pull a screw job on in that match? I think I would book Alex P. Keaton to win. And because he was a Republican, I'd book him as the heel, and he would win through some sort of nefarious means. I don't know how you could cheat so much in an Elimination Chamber match, but I would have Alex win. And if I were going to pull a screw job on somebody, obviously it would be Mike Seaver, because he was played by Kirk Cameron, and I would consider that just my own personal way of paying him back for, Fireproof or Saving Christmas. That would be my payback to Mike Seaver, a.k.a. Kirk Cameron. Captain Michael, what do you think of Satanists in the USA? Most Satanist groups appear to just be atheists with a sense of humor, and I can respect that. Yeah, that's kind of the impression I get from them as well. I think it's a little funny sometimes when Christians get really upset, really offended at the Church of Satan or Satanists, and I'm like, you realize that they're just trolling you, right? You realize that the whole Church of Satan thing, the upside down cross, the worship of Satan, like, it's all just to needle you guys, right? No, you don't get that? Okay. Yeah, I feel the same way. Patrick Dodds, Steve, what are your brief thoughts on the Rocky movies, including Creed if you've seen it? Do you like any of them? And if you've seen them all, would you consider ranking them from worst to best? Come on, man, everybody's doing it. You don't want to stand out, do you? I love the Rocky movies. I haven't seen Creed yet. I really want to see it, but I just haven't seen it yet. I'll probably see it on demand or something when it comes out. I love the Rocky movies. I enjoy them all in different ways. I think the best one is still probably the first one, but my personal favorite is Rocky 3. Even though I know it's not the best movie in the series by far, I love Rocky 3 so much. I could watch Rocky 3 every day. I love Clubber Lang. Clubber Lang is like my ultimate cheesy, over-the-top, cartoonish movie villain. I just think he's amazing. I could watch Clubber Lang all day, too. I could just watch like a supercut of just Clubber Lang. Dr. Themo, realistically, who do you think will win the primaries? I feel like it's going to be Hillary on the Democrat side, no matter how much I'd like it to be Bernie, but I have no idea who'll win the Republican side. Hopefully not Trump, because good God, why? Yeah, I agree with you. I think it'll probably be Hillary on the Democratic side. As for the Republicans, I don't know. I have no idea. I don't think it will be Trump. Maybe Rubio. I don't think it'll be Cruz either. I think Cruz looks reasonable next to Trump, but Cruz is just as much of an extremist and an unelectable right-wing, wingnut as Trump is in his own way. If I had to guess, I'd say Rubio. I think maybe they could rehab him into a general election viable candidate. Yarrow Kassir, Steve, here's a good question I hope you'll answer. Do you have any legitimate criticisms of modern feminists you feel that for the sake of progress with social justice they should move past? Yeah, and I think they are moving past it. My major criticisms of feminists and of the feminist movement would be that there's not enough attention paid to marginalized people, and I think that's being addressed. I think there are very loud voices and growing numbers of feminists, especially on the internet, who are really advocating within feminism for increased inclusion and platforming of people of color, of trans women, of lesbians, and of women who don't fall on the gender binary, and disabled women, and women who are not neurotypical, and women of all kinds who have been marginalized. I think that needs to be done more, and not just in feminism, and lots of other social justice movements too. I think the most marginalized people need to be centered and need to be assured that they are being heard, they're being allowed to participate in the movement, they're being given an equal voice and an equal amount of agency and power. I think that needs to happen more, and I think happily that is a criticism that has been addressed and is being addressed. So that's what I would say. Radical Bacon, I know you don't particularly like musicals, but would you go see Hamilton? Nope. Not interested. Billy Bob 313, you gotta watch Raw and pay-per-views for Wrestling with Wrestling. You gotta read peer-reviewed scientific journals for And Now the Good News. You gotta read apologist books for An Atheist Reads. You gotta do some research on specific subjects for 5 Stupid Things. You gotta read all YouTube comments for You Had to Ask. And when you're done doing that, you gotta film and edit all those videos. Do you have any free time? Yeah, I do actually. It's sort of cheating the premise of your question, but I consider watching wrestling to be free time because I actually really enjoy it. Like I would do that anyway, even if I wasn't doing Wrestling with Doc every Wednesday, streaming live at 4 p.m. Eastern time. I would be watching wrestling anyway, so I consider that a part of my free time. And actually, I do have a lot of free time. I try to get work finished, or at least be able to take a decent length break, by the late afternoon or the early evening, so I can just, spend time doing my own thing. But yeah, I do have some free time, but there is a lot of work. There's a lot of work, but happily I enjoy it quite a bit. Joseph Fabiano, hey Steve, do you think you'll ever make a movie review series for all the Star Wars films? I'm watching all 6 of them and giving them short, fresh reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, sort of as practice for the WordPress blog I'm planning to start, and it would absolutely kick ass to see how our opinions line up. How about it, Steve? I will do that eventually. I would have done it last month in advance of The Force Awakens, but I just didn't have time. But yeah, I think I'll probably do it at some point. Maybe I'll try to time it for the home video release of Force Awakens, so there's a little bit of relevance to it. But yeah, I think I'll definitely do that. I'll probably do all 6 of them. I mean, ideally, I would only want to do the original trilogy, but I'll probably do all of them. It'll happen at some point. It's inevitable. Hey, that's it for the lightning round. Before I get out of here, I'm going to give you guys a shout out, an awesome channel that you should check out. And this week, the channel is Cats and Coffee. This channel is a creation of a pal of mine who just started uploading videos. The channel is very young. It has less than 100 subscribers at this point. Only 3 videos so far. There's the introductory video. There's a video about being intersex, which the creator of Cats and Coffee is. And then there's a really excellent video just put up last week, I think, about feminism. And it's animated. And it's very charming, and the narration is very laid back, very calm, very pleasing to listen to, and very intelligent and sensible and worth listening to, not just for the quality of the voice, but for the content of what is being said as well. I cannot recommend Cats and Coffee highly enough. As I said, less than 100 subscribers right now. Let's maybe try to fix that. Let's try to bump those numbers up a little bit, because I really, really like this channel, and I'm looking forward to seeing more stuff as the videos continue to be made and uploaded. It's a really nice format and a really cool, really promising channel. So check it out, Cats and Coffee. Also, be sure to check out the Lemme Listen podcast. These are podcasts that are created and hosted by my friend Jason Harding of Opinionville, which is a channel you should also be subscribed to because Opinionville is just awesome. The Lemme Listen podcasts are 3 shows at the moment. They consist of Lemme Finish, which is co-hosted by Finite Atticus, where he and Jason tell stories and try to crack each other up, and it's hilarious. There is American Monsters and How to Destroy Them, the improv comedy podcast that is a cross between Twin Peaks and Coast to Coast AM, that again is just hilarious and awesome. It's currently on hiatus after its first season. It's gearing up for its second season, so you can listen to all of the old episodes. You can binge listen American Monsters, and I would highly recommend that if you have not done it. And finally, last but not least, there is the Late Seating podcast, which Jason hosts with me. We do late seating together, and we review classic films, films of note, films that are notoriously bad or legendarily good, and we give them a fresh look, and we review them. We go through the plot and make fun of the movies, and then we talk about whether we think the movie is as good or as bad as its reputation suggests. It's a really, really fun show to do. It's a fun show to listen to, and if you guys have not been listening to it, I would highly recommend that you do. You can listen to Late Seating and all of the Lemme Listen podcasts at LemmeListenPodcast.com. And I wish that you would. I really do. Anyway, that's it for me, everybody. I am out of here. Please leave a comment on this video to ask me your question for next time. Ask me anything about anything. Nothing is too serious. Nothing is too silly. I will answer as many of your questions as I possibly can in the next video. So until then, thank you for watching, and take care, everybody. Hey, one more thing. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, please like it and share it and subscribe to this channel if you're not subbed already. And also, please consider helping me to make more videos like this one by supporting this channel through Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/Steve Shives to become a patron of this channel. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.